Welcome back to another deep dive with us. We always like to go deep on the most interesting topics, and this one is definitely up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's earnings season, and you know what that means.
Yeah, everybody's watching.
Everybody's watching Nvidia.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. They are basically the poster child for this whole AI explosion.
Absolutely.
And whenever they release their numbers, the entire tech world is just kind of holding its breath.
The whole market reacts, yeah.
So we had to do a deep dive into this.
Of course.
And our main source material today is the CNBC article all about the upcoming report. And let me tell you, it is juicy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've got analyst predictions, some whispers of potential hiccups, and even Jim Cramer is chiming in on this one.
Oh, it's one of the biggest companies in the world, so...
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of anticipation riding on this report, and not just because Nvidia's a big player. I mean, They've set the bar so high,
Oh, yeah?
Everybody's wondering, can they actually keep up this pace?
Exactly, because, look at their stock. It's been on a roller coaster ride lately.
Totally.
After the last report, it plummeted almost 20%, but then it bounced back with like a 40% surge.
It's wild.
Yeah. So what is driving that kind of volatility? Is it just the market being fickle, or is there something deeper going on?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. So on the one hand, you have these incredibly high expectations.
Right.
Nvidia has been riding this wave of AI enthusiasm, and their growth has been phenomenal. But, even the most optimistic analysts know that that kind of momentum, it can't last forever.
Of course not.
So any little hint of a slowdown and investors start to get spooked.
Right.
But then on the other hand, you have this underlying uncertainty about what the future holds for AI.
Right.
Is this just a temporary hype cycle, or are we really seeing a new technological era?
Yeah.
And investors are trying to make sense of all of this. And that's what's causing this wild stock swing.
So it sounds like this upcoming report is less about the actual numbers and more about reading the tea leaves to see if Nvidia can keep defying gravity.
Exactly. The market is looking for any clues about whether Nvidia can maintain its dominance in AI, what challenges they might be facing, and what their strategy is for navigating the future.
Okay, so let's dive into some specifics then. This CNBC article mentions the rollout of Nvidia's new Blackwell chip platform.
Right.
And apparently the demand is off the charts.
Makes sense.
Which, yeah, it makes sense. These chips are insanely powerful.
For AI.
For AI applications especially.
Yeah.
But there have also been some whispers about potential overheating issues with certain configurations. Could that actually put a dent in their sales?
It's definitely a valid concern. Overheating can lead to performance issues, even system failures.
Oh, for sure.
It's not something to be taken lightly. However, the real question is whether these issues are widespread or just isolated incidents. And even if they are more common than Nvidia initially anticipated, the demand for Blackwell is so strong that it might not make a huge difference in the short term.
Okay, so it's more a question of timing than anything else.
Yeah.
Will any potential delays impact their revenue projections for the coming quarters?
Precisely, and that's where Nvidia's own guidance will be crucial.
Right.
If they signal that the rollout is going smoothly and they're confident in meeting their targets, then the stock might not be affected much.
Even with a couple reports of overheating?
Even if there are some reports of overheating, yeah. But if they start pushing back timelines or revising their forecasts, then investors might get a little nervous.
And I bet Jim Cramer is watching this all very closely.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
The article mentioned that he had some thoughts on all this.
He did, and his take was interesting.
Yeah.
He basically said that Nvidia has such a commanding lead in the AI chip market right now that even a slight hiccup with Blackwell might not be a disaster.
Right.
They just have no real competition, at least not yet. Yeah.
So even if there are some delays, they'll likely still be able to capture most of the market.
That makes sense, because it's not like there's a line of companies waiting to swoop in and steal their customers.
Not really, no.
But even with that kind of dominance, they can't afford to get complacent, right?
No.
Especially when it comes to their bottom line.
Especially with the bottom line.
And the article spent a lot of time talking about NVIDIA's profitability and this idea of gross margin.
Right.
Especially as revenue growth inevitably slows down. Wall Street is obsessed with this number, so let's break it down for our listeners. What is gross margin, and why is it so important?
Okay, so gross margin essentially tells you how much profit a company makes on each dollar of revenue after deducting the cost of goods sold. So it's a really key indicator of a company's efficiency and pricing power. And as revenue growth slows, which it will at some point,
It has to.
yeah, maintaining a healthy gross margin becomes super important. Okay, so what are analysts expecting in terms of gross margin for Nvidia, and what could potentially throw those numbers off?
So Wall Street is expecting Nvidia's gross margin to be somewhere between 73 and 74%. It's a tight range, which means even a small deviation could send shockwaves through the market. And one of the things that could impact those margins is the rollout of Blackwell itself.
Wait, so their shiny new chip platform could actually hurt their profitability? I thought it was supposed to be like their golden ticket.
It is in the long run. But new chip platforms often have lower production yields early on, meaning for every silicon wafer they use,
Right.
they're getting fewer usable chips than they would with a more mature product. It's just part of the process. But it does mean higher manufacturing costs per chip, which can eat into those margins.
So it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
It is.
They have this amazing new product that everyone wants.
Yep.
But you could put a temporary squeeze on their profits.
Yeah.
So like they're investing in their future.
Yeah.
But it comes at a cost.
Exactly, and investors need to understand that.
Right.
Lower margins in the short term don't necessarily mean the company is in trouble.
Right.
It could simply be a sign that they're investing heavily in R&D and ramping up production for a product that will hopefully be a game changer.
Okay, so we've talked about the chips, we've talked about the margins,
No?
but what about the man behind it all?
Yeah.
Jensen Huang, Nvidia's CEO.
Right.
The article mentioned that he has been doing some serious globetrotting lately. Japan, Indonesia, India, even Denmark.
Wow, he's been busy.
What is he up to?
Well, these trips actually point to a fascinating new trend that could be a major growth driver for NVIDIA, and that is sovereign AI.
Sovereign AI. Okay, I have to admit that one's new to me. Tell me more.
So sovereign AI is basically the idea that countries want more control over their own AI infrastructure and data.
Okay.
They don't want to be entirely reliant on U.S. tech giants.
Right.
So they're partnering with companies like NVIDIA to build their own AI ecosystems.
So instead of just selling chips to data centers, Nvidia is now helping entire countries become AI powerhouses.
It is.
That's a whole other level of influence.
It is. And it's a brilliant strategic move by NVIDIA.
Yeah.
They're not just selling hardware anymore. They're becoming indispensable partners in this global AI race.
Mm-hmm.
And the potential revenue from this is crazy. NVIDIA estimates that sovereign AI could generate billions of dollars in revenue this year alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
It seems like they're playing on a whole different chessboard now with much higher stakes.
Absolutely.
But it's not just about hardware and, this quest for global domination.
Right.
The article also touched on NVIDIA's growing software business.
Yes.
They have this AI enterprise offering that's apparently gaining some serious traction.
Yeah, their software revenue is growing really fast.
So they're not just selling the picks and shovels for the AI gold rush.
Nope.
They're building the entire mine.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights a key shift in NVIDIA's strategy.
Mm-hmm.
They're moving beyond just being a hardware company and becoming a full-fledged AI platform provider. They're building software tools that make it easier for companies to develop and deploy AI applications, which creates recurring revenue streams and reduces their reliance on chip sales alone.
This is starting to feel like the beginning of something truly massive.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about chips or even AI itself. It's about building a whole ecosystem that powers the future of technology.
Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out.
But with such high expectations and such rapid growth, there have to be some potential risks.
Right, yeah.
What could potentially derail NVIDIA's incredible run? That's what we'll unpack in the next part of our deep dive, so stick around. This is just getting good.
Right.
Okay, so we've established that NVIDIA is basically a rocket ship right now.
For sure.
But even rocket ships need course correction sometimes. So what are some of the potential pitfalls or challenges they could face that might, slow them down?
That's a good question. And despite all the positives, there are some headwinds to consider. One that immediately comes to mind is competition.
Right.
I mean, right now, NVIDIA is the undisputed king of AI chips.
Oh, yeah.
But there are some other major players starting to muscle into the arena.
Like who are we talking?
We're talking Intel.
Okay.
AMD, even Google is pouring resources into their own AI hardware.
Wow. So it's not even really a question of if competition heats up. It's more like when.
Exactly. And if NVIDIA stumbles even a little bit, these competitors are ready to pounce.
Right. I mean, the tech world moves fast.
So fast.
Look what happened to like Nokia with mobile phones. 1 minute they were on top and then gone.
Poof.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not just rival companies they have to worry about, right?
No.
What about the whole regulatory landscape? I mean, governments are getting more and more wary of big tech's power.
Mm-hmm.
Could that spell trouble for Nvidia?
Absolutely. Regulators are definitely starting to scrutinize the power these tech giants have.
Yeah.
We've already seen pushback on some of Nvidia's acquisitions,
Yeah.
and there could be more scrutiny of their business practices down the line.
So what kinds of things are we talking?
Well, you've got antitrust laws, data
Yeah.
privacy concerns, even national security issues.
Wow.
All of that could come into play.
So it's not just about winning the market. It's about navigating this whole complex web of rules and regulations,
Right.
which adds like a whole other layer of complexity to their growth strategy.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that keeps you up at night when it comes to Nvidia's future?
Well, there's also the broader economic climate to consider.
Right.
I mean, right now, AI is hot.
Red hot.
But what happens if there's an economic downturn or a sudden shift in tech spending? Remember the dot-com bubble?
Oh, yeah.
Even the most promising companies can be vulnerable to those big macroeconomic forces.
Right. Forces that are totally out of their control.
Yeah, you can't predict everything.
Exactly.
Right.
So even the king of AI isn't immune to like the basic laws of economics.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that no matter how innovative a company is, they're still operating within this larger system.
Mm-hmm.
That can be totally unpredictable.
Mm.
And speaking of unpredictable, what about the technology itself?
Yeah.
AI is still evolving so rapidly.
All the time.
What if some new breakthrough comes along that just completely changes the game?
That's a great point, and it's something that a lot of investors don't really think about.
Yeah.
Right now, NVIDIA's architecture is like the gold standard for AI,
Mm-hmm.
but that could change.
Easily.
New algorithms, new hardware approaches, who knows?
Right.
I mean, remember, we're still in the early stages of this whole AI revolution. We don't
Right.
know what the next big thing will be.
That's what makes this whole space so fascinating.
Oh, for sure.
It's like full of potential, but also just full of unknowns.
Yeah,
It's like exploring a new frontier.
totally.
There's excitement, risk,
Yeah.
and the constant possibility of something totally unexpected.
Exactly. And that's what makes this conversation so important.
Mm.
We need to look past the hype
Yeah.
and really consider the complexities of what AI means for our future.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here.
Yeah.
From market dominance and these new growth avenues to potential competition and unforeseen technological disruptions.
Right.
It sounds like Nvidia is kind of at a crossroads here.
It does.
They have this incredible opportunity to shape the future,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also facing some serious challenges.
Yeah, a lot of things could happen.
So with all that in mind, what's the big takeaway here for our listeners? I mean, should they be rushing to buy Nvidia stock or like battening down the hatches? I know you can't give like specific financial advice or anything,
Of course.
but what are some key insights that they should keep in mind?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that NVIDIA is still the dominant force in AI. I mean, their track record is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
They have a huge market share
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of potential for future growth. But like with any investment, you got to be aware of the risks.
Right.
Competition is heating up, regulation is tightening,
Right.
and the overall economy is a bit of a wild card right now.
Yeah, so maybe don't put all your eggs in the AI basket, no matter how tempting it looks.
Exactly. Diversification is key. And remember, investing is a marathon, not a sprint. So don't freak out over like short-term stock fluctuations.
Right. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Yeah, focus on the fundamentals and make decisions based on your own risk tolerance and financial goals.
Okay, so that's all super solid advice.
Mm-hmm.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with something to really chew on, something that goes a little beyond, the usual headlines and analyst reports.
Okay.
We've talked about NVIDIA's incredible growth, their dominance in AI hardware, their expansion into software, this whole rise of sovereign AI.
Mm-hmm.
What is NVIDIA's biggest challenge isn't a competitor or a regulation.
Yeah.
It's something much more fundamental. What if the demand for AI itself just hits a wall?
That's a great question. And it's something that's on a lot of people's minds in the industry. Like right now, we're seeing this huge appetite for AI solutions. But what happens if the hype fades? What if companies realize that, AI isn't a magic bullet?
Right.
Or what if the ethical concerns or unintended consequences start to, overshadow the benefits?
It's like that old saying, be careful what you wish for.
Right.
Like we might be so focused on building this AI future that we kind of forget to ask, is this actually the future we want?
Exactly. And I'm not saying AI is a fad or anything.
Right.
It's already changing the world in huge ways.
For sure.
And that's only going to accelerate.
Right.
But it's important to remember that technology is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
All right.
The future of AI really depends on us making conscious choices about how we develop it, how we use it, how we integrate it into our lives.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's about our values, our ethics, and our vision for the future.
Exactly.
That's a pretty powerful message.
It is.
And it really highlights why conversations like this are so important.
I agree. We need to go beyond just the hype and the technical details and talk about the real societal impact of AI.
Yeah. What kind of world do we want to live in?
Right. What are the risks and how can we avoid them? These are questions that I think everybody should be asking.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's not enough to just be excited about the possibilities. We need to be thoughtful about it and responsible about how we shape this technology. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
And I feel like I've learned a ton.
Me too.
It's clear that Nvidia is a company to watch, but it's also clear that the future of AI is anything but certain.
Totally.
There are so many exciting possibilities,
So many.
but also a lot of potential pitfalls.
Yeah, for sure.
So to our listeners out there, I encourage you to keep learning, keep questioning, and keep engaging in these conversations. The future of AI, and maybe even the future of humanity, depends on our ability to think critically and make smart choices. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into NVIDIA and the world of AI. Until next time, stay curious.